So good morning. Thank you for joining us for the Career Readiness Network today on informational interviewing and networking. My name is Samantha Jackson. I'm a college and career readiness consultant here at Kent ISD. I'm joined right now this morning by one of my colleagues, Eric Kelleher, also a consultant here. Quick housekeeping item. I think everyone is okay right now as far as I see, but just make sure that your Zoom name matches what you are registered as or some combination of kind of your first and last name. There's no form you need to fill out for sketches. I'll just look at the Zoom data. So just make sure that, like I said, I think everyone right now is okay unless there's two Brittany's. Brittany Steenland, I don't know if you are just in there twice. If there are two Brittany's, the second Brittany, I need last name or last initial or something, just so we can make sure that we give you the appropriate sketches. And if you need help doing that, just let me know and I'll give instructions for that. For those who don't know or who haven't joined us before, just a kind of quick overview of what we do here in the Career Readiness Department. So we have currently 3. We just hired a 4th consultant. Okay, great. Thanks, Brittany. We'll have 4 consultants. Each of us works with specific school districts within the Kent ISD service area. So on the left, you'll see kind of the full list of who we currently support. Our overarching goal in our department is to really help with that K-12 career readiness planning process. And so we do that in a lot of different ways, but we're supporting educators K through 12. We provide professional development like this regionally. We also do it within specific schools and districts. We help with EDP implementation. We help connect students and schools to industry, so bringing people in for classroom speakers, taking students out on industry tours, hosting career fairs, career days, things like that. And then also helping to curate or develop career readiness resources. So things like what we'll be talking about today. If there's ever something that you need help finding, you need created for you to utilize with students, we're happy to help with that. For the Career Readiness Network, we have developed 3 mindsets to kind of keep at the top of your mind as we go through. The first is that this is inquiry-based, so we learn through asking questions, exploring and unpacking assumptions. The second is that there's no simple answer. So while I am presenting this information, I am not the holder of all of the knowledge. The learning process is not a straight line, and we understand there are many great ways to approach this work. And so we encourage you to share best practices with each other. We'll have a couple of opportunities for you to share with each other and get ideas from others. And the last is that this is problem solving and action oriented, and knowing that our work here will have an immediate connection and application in K-12 settings. So we try to make sure that in each of our sessions, we have something that you can actually take away from it and use with your students. Just a kind of quick overview of the structure of this series. So we have 9 sessions. We've already had 2. We're on our 3rd one here. The sessions are all recorded. You can't get sketches for past recordings, but they are available on our YouTube for you to go back and check out if you're interested. New this year, we also have an asynchronous version where you can go on and complete modules at any time. They're released in a similar order once per month. However, you cannot get sketches for the same session twice. So for example, if you do this informational interviewing session today live, you cannot get sketches for the asynchronous version. However, if you missed the Careers and Technology panel last month, you could go and get sketches for that asynchronous version. So even though you can't get it for the recording, you can do it that way, and it's just a little bit different. And so if you have questions about that, you need access to that, let me know, and I'm happy to help you get connected. Next, I want to share a resource for all of you kind of between sessions, our Padlet, and I'm actually going to exit out here. So actually, let me throw that link in the chat for you. So our Padlet is available to you kind of between sessions to interact with others. You'll see some different categories here. If you have questions that come up between sessions, if you have resources you want to share, if you have ideas for kind of future sessions or other things you'd like us to cover, you can post those here. To post in any of these, you just click this plus, you type your little note, you can change it and publish it. If you have resources you want to share, you can also share links, you can upload documents, you can upload pictures, things like that here as well. All right, so for our warm up today, I'm actually going to split you into a couple of breakout rooms, have you share who you are, where you're at, and then just a couple of questions about networking that I'm going to copy and put in the chat here for you so you'll be able to see those. So do you enjoy networking? What words come to mind when you think of networking? And have you ever heard about an opportunity or been considered for an opportunity because of a connection? So I'm going to put those in the chat. But again, just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and then go ahead and talk about those questions or anything else related to networking. I'm going to split you into a couple of breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, but if you finish early, feel free to come back. All right. And I'm going to, let me make sure. Oh, okay. Brittany, you're nodding twice. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open those now. I'm recording, so I'm going to do that now.
I can share real quick. I'm Julie Vandermolen from Catholic Central, and I'm fairly new to this job as a director of innovation, but pretty much everything I have been able to implement has been through the network of our alumni, because we have some pretty consistent alumni that continue to send. So I was able to start an internship program last year, and place 7 kids in internships, and every single one of them was a Catholic Central alumni business that allowed me to do that. So I don't know if you consider that networking. I consider it networking, but all of my career speakers and all of my job shadow placements so far, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but the majority of them have come from that pool of people. So.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later too. But, it's especially easy when you have a connection. When we do career days and guest speakers at schools, a lot of times we like to pull from, people who went there, people who have kids there, or staff's relatives that they can pull in, because if you have a connection, you're maybe a little bit more likely to want to engage with it or to help out there. Let me let's fix this real quick. Let's see if that'll work. Okay. All right. I'm just going to show this really quick video from the Stanford Life Design Lab on informational interviewing.
An informational interview is an amazingly powerful tool. It can help you learn about different types of work you're interested in. And by providing inside perspective, it may even connect you to opportunities you couldn't see from the outside. So let's take a look at what informational interviewing is all about. An informational interview is not a job interview, and it's not a tricky play to get a job. If you're asking for a job and they do have one, then they'll likely start judging whether you're a good fit. And if they don't have one, then that conversation ends there. The key to a successful informational interview is curiosity. With sincere curiosity and good questions about your interviewee's life and experience, you gain insights into their successes and failures, how they got where they are, and what's important to them. Your curiosity will lead to an authentically engaged conversation, which also opens the door for the interviewee to get curious about you. The professional you're speaking with might say something like, "Wow, you're asking some really good questions." And in that transition, informational interviewing becomes even more valuable for someone looking for work. Informational interviews give you an opportunity to see what kinds of work resonate with you and help you determine what communities you would like to be a part of. In a good informational interview, the professional you speak with gets a lot out of the conversation too. They get to discuss their life and their work with someone who's curious about their experience and values their expertise. Plus, they get the pleasure of talking with someone who's genuinely interested in what they do. How do you do it well? Here are 5 tips to get you started. First, do your homework. Take some time to research LinkedIn or other online platforms to learn about the professional you're interviewing. Consider what questions you have about their life and work. The second tip is to try to meet in person. On the phone is okay, but face-to-face is best. 3, always try to buy the coffee or lunch. Your interviewee is giving you their time. Paying is a good way of showing your appreciation and beginning to create a connection. 4, ask your interviewee who else they recommend you talk with. If the interview has gone well, they may be willing to connect you to other professionals you can learn from and who might have opportunities for you. Finally, tip number 5. After the interview, send a thank you. Email is okay, but a handwritten note is even better. And if they asked you to keep them posted on your progress, do so.
All right. So a lot of times we can kind of use the terms informational interviewing, even job shadowing, networking kind of interchangeably. They're all 3 separate but connected topics, right? So informational interviews at their core are really just conversations. They're just a chance to spend some time with someone who is in a particular profession to learn more about that field, company, position. The goal of the informational interview is not necessarily to get a job, but rather to gain knowledge about that field, company, etc. Oh. So having students do an informational interview allows them to gain insight into different roles in various industries and job functions. It can help them clarify their career goals as they can hear firsthand about a professional's experience to determine if that path aligns with their interests. It also allows them to begin developing their professional network, teaching them valuable skills about identifying and contacting employers. It can also help them build relationships with professionals in their field of interest that they may be able to reach out to later for future job or internship opportunities, or who can connect them with others in the field. One of the things I loved in that video was the idea that at the end of an informational interview, you should ask who else to connect with. Um, so I did an internship in grad school. I was working in higher ed and I was on a college campus, and I would just meet with different people around this campus. And I would always ask, is there anyone else you think I should connect with? And, there were people in fields that I never thought I would want to go into, but I gained a lot of valuable information to make that decision about whether that was an area of higher ed and student affairs that I wanted to go into. And just met a lot of really interesting people that way. And people love to connect you with other people. And it also helps them to practice their interviewing skills, even though they're not necessarily answering interview questions, they're asking most of the questions in the informational interview setting. It does still allow them to practice their communication and interpersonal skills in a pretty low pressure setting. It's all about information gathering. It also helps them better understand how to articulate their interests and their qualifications. And while the goal of an informational interview isn't necessarily to get a job or internship, it can lead to future opportunities with that employer, like job shadows or internships, and also just helps them to get an kind of inside scoop on the organizational culture, company insights, any prospective job openings in the future, things like that. So a lot of times we see students go into informational interviews just completely open, maybe haven't done any research before, but I highly recommend that they do some research before they go into any informational interview settings. They kind of know what to expect. They can prepare the right types of questions for that professional. We're going to talk a little bit more about helping students identify professionals in just a moment, but first, they should identify a professional in a company or position of interest. research that person or that company, at least have some idea. So if they're going to a manufacturing facility, maybe they should understand what type of product that company makes so that they can tailor their questions to that specific industry. In just a second, we'll have a couple examples of how they can contact them professionally. And I have found we do need to give students some pretty explicit examples of, what that professional email or phone call script, or, if they want to DM them on social media, that's okay, but how can they do that professionally? And then preparing those questions. Remembering that, again, it is just a conversation. So some sample questions that students might want to ask in an informational interview about their educational background, how they became interested in the field, their major responsibilities, what is a typical day like, what kind of individual is best suited for this type of position, so the skills or personality, how can they better prepare themselves now for this field? So even if you have, a middle schooler talking to someone, how can they prepare themselves in middle school and high school for it? And then again, is there anyone else they recommend talking to? I always tell students to think about what is most important for them to know to make that decision about if it's a good field for them or not. So if they're really concerned about the work environment, or if they're really concerned about how they'll be working with other people, or if they're really concerned about how long they'll have to be in school, just making sure that they're tailoring those questions to the things that are most important for them to know, rather than just kind of like a boilerplate list of questions that they can find. All right, a few strategies to help find a professional. And I know some of these might seem obvious, but to a lot of students, they are not. Um, so first, using their own network. So helping them think of their parents or family or friends, and then also thinking about who those people know. So maybe they don't have a veterinarian in their family personally, but do they have pets that they take to a vet? Is that someone that they could reach out to? Does a family friend know someone that they could reach out to? Do they have coaches or other professionals at school, teachers that could reach out to people? And then again, those professionals, if they want to be a dentist, could they try to talk to their dentist that they go to? A lot of times they don't think about those people as people in their network. The second is using good old Google. Um, so a lot of times when I'm trying to find new employers to add to our network, I will literally Google whatever field near Grand Rapids. And I'm going to show an example of this just in a second. Because again, I think a lot of students will do this and then they still don't really know where to go from there. But having them email the department, looking for a specific person and cold calling them. Again, it is okay for them to DM them on social media. I have had some of my most success getting contact with new employers by sending them a Facebook message, because a lot of times they're checking that a little bit more than some of their emails. And then again, if you're here in Kent County, also feel free to reach out to our team. We're always happy to help, especially if you have kind of a niche field or students are really, really struggling to get in contact with someone in a certain area. We are always happy to try to help you connect with people as well. But again, just an example of using Google for this. So let's say that a student is interested in, um, a dentist and they're in Kentwood. So let's say like dentist near Kentwood. Literally just Google. I'll just look at the map. I kind of, see if there's a certain area I want to be in. But what students don't really know what to do from here is they'll Google it and they'll be like, great, I found this one. Now what do I do here? So I always encourage them to go to their website. And usually I'm looking for some kind of like about page. And so a lot of times on the about page, they'll have um, information about specific professionals. So on this one, they have their doctors, they have the rest of their team. So if they're looking for a hygienist or something, I'll have them go here, maybe read about it, see if there's any connections there. Sometimes they'll have an email right here, sometimes they don't. If they have a specific person they find that they want to email and the email's there, they could email them. Otherwise, we're looking for a contact page. This one gives us a phone number, doesn't look like they have an email. I personally really love emailing, so sometimes what I'll do is I will go to good old Facebook let's see, what is this one called? Breton Gardens Family Dentistry. Let's see if this works out for me. So I'll see if they have a Facebook page. And a lot of times, oh, they do. They will list an email on their Facebook page. I know a lot of students aren't using Facebook. This might be more of a tool for you to help students. But a lot of times they do have an email there. So they could go here, they could look up that, they could email them from here, or again, they could cold call them from their website. So again, pretty quick example of how I recommend students go through that process to find people. Again, if you tell them to Google it, they're going to Google it, and then they don't really necessarily know where to go from there. So I'm telling them look for an about page, a team page, a contact page to find that information for people to reach out to. All right. And then just a couple examples of professional communication. I'm not going to like talk through all of this at you, but you will get a copy of these slides. Please feel free to use this with students if you would like to. But just reminding them that it does need to be professional. They need to make sure they're giving them all the information necessary. This is an example if they were requesting like a job shadow, but making sure to let them know what kind of commitment is they're looking at. Like, I would like to spend 30 minutes talking to you about your job, or I need to complete a 4-hour job shadow, whatever the expectation is from the student, whatever the requirements are, and making sure that they know that it's directed towards them and they're not just like blanket sending this out to a billion people. Again, they've done some research, they know the type of industry that this person is in, and including that in their email. Similarly, kind of a cold call script. So if they're calling an employer up, an example of if they're leaving a voicemail, again, making sure they give them all of the important information, how to reach them, so giving them their phone number or email address again, and then an idea for kind of if they're having a conversation. I do find that a lot of times when I give students a script for a conversation, they don't realize that they need to kind of like leave space for responses. So just reminding them of that, giving them some ideas of things that they can say, but reminding them that, even if they're calling it as a conversation, make sure that you give time for them to respond to your request. All right. So again, there is, a little bit of a difference between informational interviewing and networking. They're related, but they're different concepts. Informational interviews are one-on-one conversations with professionals in your field of interest, while networking is really just that larger act of building a professional network of contacts that can help in your job search or career development. I also think about it as informational interviewing is part of the networking process, but not all networking leads to informational interviews. Also, networking can be more passive. So I'm sure we've all been to events. Maybe you don't necessarily want to be there, or you don't really know how to act and you're kind of standing in the corner. You maybe go, but you don't talk to anyone. Networking, especially events, can be a lot more passive, whereas informational interviews are active and require more initiative on the student's part. They're engaging in the conversation. Again, it's one-on-one or maybe, a couple students meeting with a person. So a lot more active. And I know a lot of students are not super familiar with the concepts of an ATM, but still kind of a good metaphor here. You can't really expect to withdraw when you haven't made a deposit. So, networking, informational interviewing, is a two-way street. So, in the informational interview, yes, that is a student getting information from the person, but to actually add that person to their network to make them useful in the future, they need to make sure that it is a continuous process, and that they don't let their network go idle. So they can't meet with someone for an informational interview in 10th grade and expect to reach out to them their junior year of college and say, hey, I need an internship now. If they want to do that, they need to make sure that they're maintaining that relationship, keeping them informed of what's going on. So maybe they do that informational interview and then they get a part-time job their senior year and they reach out to that person and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm working in this field. And then maybe they go to college and they major in that area, letting them know, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm going to XYZ school, majoring in the field we talked about. So it doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be, every month they're reaching out, but just keeping that person kind of in the loop and letting them know how much that conversation helped them. And also reminding students not to burn bridges. The professional world is a lot smaller than you think. And so making sure that they're always acting professionally. If they're setting up a conversation, they're showing up for that conversation, because you never know who you will cross paths with again or who they might know that they might talk to. All right. So we're going to do a little activity here next. You may have heard of, the 6 degrees of separation or the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you can connect all celebrities in 6 degrees back to Kevin Bacon. But we are going to do the 6 degrees of education. So I tried to make this somewhat fair because we have people all over the state. So I tried to put you in places kind of close to you. So we'll see how this works out. But what I would love for you to do is in your breakout room, try to identify, an overlap in your background. So whether that's schools you've attended, schools you worked at, and identify a person you have in connection. That's really kind of the main goal, is identifying a person. Or finding the most unique thing outside of education you have in common. So in your group, try to do at least one of these things. Again, ideally, try to identify a person you have in connection. I'll be really, really impressed if we can do that. But again, you can do any of these 3 things. So I'm going to copy the questions here, put those in the chat for you. All right, and it's going to take me just a second to set up the breakout rooms because like I said, I tried to make it so that I can give you a fair shot here. All right, so um, all right, I think we've got it there. So again, I'm gonna actually set the time this time. I'm gonna give you about 15 minutes here. Again, if you get done super early, feel free to come back. But I will give you 15 minutes and try to do 1, 2, or 3 of these things. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it now. All right, I would love to hear how you're connected. Any group want to share any overlap, person you have connected, unique thing? What did you talk about?
Her some of the people that she worked with have now worked in my district, so we had some connections with people like that.
Absolutely. Any other connections you found?
Hey, Samantha, our connections were pretty similar. We had worked with individuals in other institutions or at other schools that now work in other districts, or that now we're working with them, but they worked with them previously. So pretty similar.
Yep, of course. Yeah, so of course, super common in education, and again, tried to put you kind of in like regions that might have some overlap. Um, because yes, that of course happens pretty often. All right, so it's still sharing, I think so. All right, so this will be more applicable for our high school crowds. I'm really sorry for our K through 8 crowd, but hopefully good information for you. I thought it might be helpful just to talk about LinkedIn for a second. A lot of times, so my background, I worked in higher ed before working in this role, and I would work with students on, trying to find jobs and internships and making connections. And we had a lot of students that we would, come in their freshman year and we would build them a LinkedIn. But sometimes we would have students who had built it in high school, and it's definitely not too early for, especially your juniors and seniors to build it. I tell students it's a great place to kind of connect or to collect your connections. So, you meet a lot of people, but you don't necessarily want to follow them on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever they do. And so this is a great place to kind of keep those professional connections. So just wanted to kind of quickly go through a couple of things. One, just like what a LinkedIn profile should look like for you, but then also how to utilize it for your students to help build connections. So oops, exited out of the wrong thing. Okay. So first, just really quickly, and again, sorry if this is like common knowledge, you already know this, but just wanted to quickly kind of go through like what a basic LinkedIn profile looks like, especially as you're building it with students. Your students don't need to have every single section filled out by any means, just like some basic stuff. Um, if they have any work experience, even like a part-time job, babysitting, like whatever, they could definitely include that on their profile. They can have their education information, even high school information they can put on there, but then certainly as they transition, if they go to college or a trade school or something, they can certainly put that information on there as well. Volunteer information. Another really nice thing is that they can get recommendations. So even in high school, if they have a teacher, a coach, a employer that wants to give them a recommendation, that can be really helpful as they're, starting to look for part-time jobs and internships post-grad. Not many high schoolers will have this filled out. So that could really help set them apart if they do have any recommendations on their profile. Again, they certainly do not need to have it all completely filled out. Having a little bit in their about section, like talking about kind of what their career goals are, what they're thinking. And then the other thing I always recommend, and we see a lot with students, is, here in this kind of like tagline, they'll put like high school student, which is great. But, using this as kind of valuable real estate when people are like searching through profiles, this is what they're seeing as their name in that kind of like tagline. So, including what their future major is or what kind of career they want to go into is a little bit more helpful than high school student. So encouraging them to do that. And again, just a great place for them to kind of collect their connections. So, they can search directly for people. People can give them their, specific LinkedIn URL for them to go ahead and connect with. The other thing I really wanted to show you, though, as you're maybe helping students find connections, so a couple of different things. One, again, especially for these niche fields, like I'll use Google, I'll use other resources, but sometimes I'm literally just going to LinkedIn and, I'm typing interior designer. And then what I'll do is up here at the top, you see a lot of different types of filters. And so I can actually, I'm looking for people. So click on people, and then I can narrow it down. So I can select locations, and let's say that I'm looking specifically in Grand Rapids here, Grand Rapids, Michigan, show results. I literally just did this for a career day. I really needed more people in Caledonia, and so I did this to find people. And so now here you're seeing people who have interior design in their profile in Grand Rapids. And then, I'll just start kind of clicking around, seeing what they do, maybe looking at this one doesn't have any info, but I might look at what that company does. And then they could either connect with them, or again, this is where I might just start looking, do they have any contact info? Do they have a portfolio? Can I just Google their name and their company and does an email show up? But they could also click on connect. They could add a note to them saying, hey, I'm interested in, doing an informational interview to learn more about interior design, or I want to do a job shadow or whatever. Or if you're doing this on behalf of your students, letting them know that you're looking for people to connect with students. So you can do it through the connection here. Again, searching them. I just did this for a video game designer that was really hard to find here in Grand Rapids. And so I was able to find someone to come to, I don't know how his name is spelled, to come to a career day last week who, maybe I don't remember. Okay, yeah. You can see I didn't even connect with him, but I looked at his contact info. He had a portfolio. I went to his portfolio. I found his email address from there, connected with him, got him to come to this career day. So again, a couple different ways you can do that. The other way that I like to do, again, especially if I'm doing it on behalf of students, so if I'm one looking, or if I'm doing it for myself, is again, utilizing my own connections. So when I think about the institutions I went to, so I graduated from Alma College. If I go to the Alma College school page, you can look at alumni. And when you click on alumni, you can search by a lot of different things. So again, let's say I'm looking for maybe not an interior designer because we didn't have that, but let's say I'm looking for, okay, accountant that pops up. I can search that. And then I can see people who went to Alma College that are in that field. And then again, kind of the same thing. But then when I'm reaching out to them, I'm saying, hey, I'm a fellow Scott. I have a student that I want to connect with you to do da 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 da. And again, having that connection makes them a little bit more likely to say yes than random Joe Schmo that I just kind of Googled or found. And so while that's a great method, I use this a lot because we have that connection and they're really excited to then work with me and help students. You also can search on these alumni pages. You can search again specifically based on where they live. But you can also look at, what they studied. If you're not quite sure, like, okay, the student says they're interested in psychology. I don't know what to look for. You can click on what they studied and find people that way as well. So a couple of different ways, like I said, to use LinkedIn, whether it's your students building a profile and looking for people themselves, or if you're trying to help a student, find people. Again, you can just search, click people, look at the locations, or kind of go to a place that you already have connections. So, something like a school. This also is great if you are looking, let's say that I'm looking at like a job or something. Let's say I'm looking at a job. It will tell you how many people from, your university or whatever work there, or if you have any connections that are already there. So I can see 3 school alumni work here. You can actually see who they are. Again, so like Eric's example earlier, I could reach out to these people and say, hey, I'm looking, I'm really interested in this job. I'd love to connect with you. So again, just another way to utilize it. All right. Any questions before we get into our last section here? I'll have time at the end for questions as well.
Samantha, I actually have some questions about the LinkedIn since you're,
Yeah.
talking about that. Is that pretty common for high schools to have their students set up those accounts?
It's not super common, which is again how it can help some students stand out, particularly as, like I said, especially like their senior year as they're looking to go out into the working world. A lot of employers will, Google or look on social media for students to, see what types of things they post, especially once if they go to college, if they're looking for part-time jobs or internships there, they'll look for them. So it can help them stand out if they do have a profile. And again, also just helps them as if you're having them do these job shadows, if you're having them do these informational interviews or whatever that looks like. If you have mock interviews at your school, it's just a great place to kind of start to collect those people in their network that they can then reach out to later.
Yeah, I just wonder if anybody has any opinions on doing that, because I definitely can see the benefits of that. I've always just sort of shied away from it, thinking it was more of an adult thing, post-graduation
Yeah.
item. But I do know some schools do it. But you guys ever done any training sessions on how to implement at the high school level, lesson
We
plans or anything for it, or not?
have not, but certainly can.
Okay. I could see us taking a look at this. I can guarantee you that it's blocked in our student Chromebooks.
Yeah.
So,
That is a potential barrier there.
but we can get it unblocked. Okay. Anyway, I was just throwing those questions out there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So like I said at the beginning, we do want to make sure that you are able to take something away from this session that you can, utilize with students other than like, great, hopefully you gained some knowledge today, but, maybe some activities or resources. Again, you'll get the slides after. So you'll be able to see all of these as well. But I've broken this down. So, implementation in K-12, I've got some elementary examples. I've got some middle and high school examples of how to use this information with students. So in elementary school, we're really focusing on the idea of the importance and kind of power of connections, and also realizing that career skills are life skills. So while we don't explicitly have to say, you're going to use this in your career in 13 years, it's just, again, good life skills to teach students. It's important to know how to introduce yourself, how to have conversations with others, how to ask for help. And so when introducing the idea of networking to elementary students, starting with some basic career skills like shaking someone's hand, maintaining eye contact, introducing themselves. This example I have up here actually is an example someone has done within a math class. So they had a student go, like let's say they had, John here. They said, hey, John, go find another student. And John went and found Amy. And then they said, okay, great, John, go find another student. And John found Anne. And then they actually had students graph how their connections were connected. So they looked at all of the students and who they went and talked to in the class. Maybe they had them talk to 5 people. And then they actually showed, okay, so John talked to Matt, but Matt also talked to Alex, and Alex also talked to Steve. So they actually tied it into a math lesson as well. Excuse me. Another example that we put together, having students think about their own connections, their own people in their life. So an activity we created is this VIP, or very important people, career tree. So having students think about important people in their life and having them write those down and asking them, what their career is, and start to think about that. Another example, something that a lot of schools are already doing, but again, just ties to the idea of networking. At the beginning of the school year, when you're having students, start to get to know each other, having them interview each other, having them do like a bingo, going around and, seeing who they can find that matches different things, or having them do an interview of a peer to find out some information about them. Again, gets them used to asking questions, gets them used to answering questions for others. But again, just helping them understand that power of connection. And here's kind of an example of that bingo again. So have students, walk around and talk to others in their class. Maybe they're trying to find people with things that are similar or different from them. So if they, put down their favorite animal is a horse, maybe they're looking for someone who is similar, or maybe someone that's different. All right, for middle and high school, like I mentioned earlier, part of it is just teaching them email and phone etiquette. So teaching them the parts of an email, how do you leave a professional email or voicemail, things like that. We know that these are learned skills. And so working with middle school, even upper elementary school, on these skills. Have them write a fake email to someone they would like to talk to, whether that's a real person, a fictional character, whatever. And making sure that they're including why they want to talk to them. You could also, if you're, having guest speakers come into class, if you're doing a career day, a career fair, have students prepare their own questions to ask guest speakers or panelists that are attending. Again, thinking about the things that are really important for them to know. So beyond just the basic, what do you do in a day? But thinking about what is important for them to know to decide if this is a good career option for them. You could also, again, have students conduct an informational interview. This could be part of a project. It could be a portfolio. Some schools do it as a graduation requirement, do it during an English class, but having them actually conduct an informational interview. If you have students do job shadows, I highly encourage you to make sure that they do the outreach. So even if you might be finding some contact for them, making sure that they're the ones that are actually going through and setting up those opportunities with people. And then, like I said, having them start to kind of build their network through something like LinkedIn. All right. So for our last bit of time here, we're probably not going to spend up until 10:30, but going to give you a little bit of time to just kind of sit and think while hopefully you have some time. I know that there's lots of distractions, but hopefully you have some time to just kind of sit and think, adapting one of these activities for students, an example shown here, something you've already created, or just thinking through like how might you utilize this information with your students. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, probably like 5 minutes or so, just to turn off, your camera's not already off, but to sit here and kind of think through how you might do that. Then I'm going to put you in breakout groups. I'll probably just do two big groups. Just one more time for you to share, get feedback from others, get some ideas from others, kind of best practices. And then we'll come back and just share out one last time with the full group. So right now, I'll give you probably about 10 minutes. It's going to be pretty quiet here to just sit and, think through how might you use this information with students, whether it's something you already do that you could adapt or, an example you've seen here that you maybe wanted to look at. And then I'll put you into those breakout groups. Okay. Welcome back again. Just waiting for a couple more people to come back. All right, welcome back. Does anyone have any ideas you wanted to share, whether new ideas, best practices of things that you've been doing that work really well with students? Anything you want to share?
Well, I'll go ahead and just touch on
Thanks.
something. It does sound like everybody that I met with in each of the different groups does do some sort of a job shadow requirement, trying to get students connected, or if you want to use the word networked, in industry, which I think is kind of a necessary thing these days. So, it's refreshing to see that other people are doing that. Some do them a little bit differently, where we bring people in some of the time, we take kids out some of the time, but trying to be very pointed in connecting our kids with specific careers that they are interested in. We went away from the career fair, because we felt like bringing in 12 to 16 companies only met the interest of maybe a quarter or less of our students, though it exposed them to good stuff. But anyway, I think the pointed job shadow, and I shared with the last group that professional communications letter, voicemail, and cold call script, I typed that up, what you shared with us, and that's another resource that I didn't actually have. I just kind of gave it lip service, but now I have a printed copy, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I work with a lot of the charter schools here in Kent County, and several of them require students to do job shadows or informational interviews of some version. And I always share with students, my own story about, because sometimes they're like, oh, I just have to do this for a grade or just to graduate or whatever the case may be. But I always share my own story with them about, I spent basically all of middle school, all of high school, most of college thinking I wanted to go into mental health counseling. Literally decided it because I read a book, and was like, wow, this sounds great. People told me, you're great at giving advice and you're great at listening. And so I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. Majored in psychology, took all my psych classes, loved it. But then I actually got to a counseling skills class my junior year of college and I hated it. It was the worst time of my life. I realized at that point that, as a counselor, you don't actually always give advice. You're trying to help people find it within themselves and help them, grow. And I realized I did not like that. And so then I went through a crisis my junior year of college after spending all of this time and money, thinking that this is what I wanted to do. And how helpful would it have been for me in high school or even earlier in college to talk to someone who actually did that job, who could have told me that a lot earlier, and I maybe realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And, I could have gone through what ended up being a very frantic exploration period over a couple of months, my, junior to senior year of college. Could have happened a lot earlier, and I could have gotten, more exposure and experience. And so, by doing this in high school before you're making what could be a really expensive decision, whether you decide to go to college or whether they're deciding to go straight into the workforce, or going to trade school, but helping them make a really informed decision about what they want to do rather than I've seen a doctor on TV and I want to do that, or I've heard of an architect and I want to do that. But actually being able to talk to, get exposure to that field to see if that's really a good idea, could save them a lot in the long run. So yeah, definitely love that so many people are embracing that. And again, realizing that some students grumble about it and don't quite understand, the value of that experience, but that in the long run, we know that it does have a really positive impact on students. All right. Any final thoughts, questions, um, again, best practices or questions that you have for today? All right. Not seeing any. My email is up here. Please, you're always welcome to reach out to me if you're here in the ISD. You're welcome to reach out to your assigned consultant, or if you don't have one assigned, happy to connect with you in the meantime until that person is assigned. Again, you'll get a copy of the slides, you'll get a copy of the recording. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Samantha, are the slides just being sent to the email we registered with?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Have a good day.
Thanks. Have a great day, Aaliyah.